A new poll this week could pose some warning signs for President Biden's bid for re-election. The poll from CNN showed the president in a virtual tie or losing to a number of GOP candidates, with his approval rating down to 39% in that poll. Two-thirds of Democrats in the poll said they wanted their party to nominate someone else. The president and the governor both overseas this weekend. Governor Holcomb in Japan while the president's at the G20. Right now, let's bring in our panel to talk about this week's top stories. We have former state party chair for the Indiana Democrats, Robin Winston, with us this week, along with former GOP lawmaker Mike Murphy, Purdue political science professor Dr. Martin Sweet, and UIndy political science professor Dr. Laura Wilson. So Laura, I'll start with you. What do you make of those poll numbers and what they say about President Biden's standing right now ahead of 2024?
Well, it shows that he's vulnerable, but not just him. 46% of Americans in there said they'd pick anybody but him. But then you had 44% who said anyone but Trump. So I think it shows you a couple of things. First of all, they're very divisive. We may in fact have another race where you have two maybe less popular candidates as options. But that same poll also showed that Nikki Haley might be the Republicans' best bet. And that's really interesting because all the other polls for likely Republican primary voters don't indicate that. She's towards the bottom of the list. So I think there is a disconnect there, but also you see it's a highly contentious election even 14 months out.
Martin, what about those head-to-head matchups? Certainly noteworthy that Nikki Haley seemed to be best poised to go up against the president, up by 6 in that poll, but Donald Trump and Mike Pence also had a slim lead head-to-head over President Biden as well.
Right. So when you look at those head-to-head numbers, those are what we call point estimates. And all of those races, except for the Nikki Haley race, are within the margin of error. So in effect, they're statistically a tie. Haley's the one who actually does demonstrate a bit of a lead. And if you look sort of underneath the hood and look at the crosstabs, it's with white, college-educated women in particular, where she's doing really, really well. And I think that's going to really be the strategy for her, both in the primary and then whoever Republicans run, that's what they're going to have to target in the general as well.
So, Robin, are those numbers concerning to you ahead of 2024?
Well, yeah, anytime that's that tight. But this is going to boil down to the Electoral College. But doctor and both doctors are correct in that women are siding with Nikki Haley. And what did she say during the debate? That she wasn't adamantly strong pro-life. She was willing to listen to another part. And I think that's going to be a big issue in the election, which will benefit Joe Biden.
What's your response to all of this, Mike? How do you see this from across the aisle? And what about the polling numbers that we showed from Indiana earlier, with Mike Braun faring the best in a head-to-head matchup for governor against Jennifer McCormick?
Well, first of all, I wrote a column in the Messenger 2 weeks ago on the 26th, which said, isn't it sad that we have our best choices are Trump and Biden? I mean, it says something really bad about our entire choice, the way we make choices here in this country. And I said then Donald Trump could be the last Republican president in history, because I think the party could fail after 2024. When it gets down to the current polls, it's again sad, because Haley, who seems to do the best right now, has flip-flopped so many times. When she was the UN ambassador, she was somewhat independent of Trump, at least opinionated, and she was the first one to crawl on her hands and knees from South Carolina all the way down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss up to Trump. And she's not much better than Lindsey Graham, frankly.
Generally, are these head-to-head polls this far out reliable? We mentioned that one in Indiana earlier showing maybe Mike Braun faring the best against Jennifer McCormick. What do you make of that?
No, the polls are fun for us to talk about right now, but you know, things don't happen really until August. I always go back to August of '88 when George H.W. Bush was down 30 points in the polls and came back and won. So we have a long, long way to go. It's fun to talk about, and it's maybe good for fundraising back and forth, but that's about it.
So, Laura, speaking of that race for governor, we saw Mike Braun earlier in that interview we did with him recently. He has sort of a fine line to walk here, right? He's running for governor, but he's still in the Senate, and Congress is really going to be in the spotlight here in the coming weeks with the threat of potentially yet another government shutdown.
Yeah, and on the eve of the last one, he talked about really a fair criticism. He had 2 days to read a 4,100-page document that he claimed looked more like a wish list than an actual bill. I think that's a very realistic criticism, but the problem that he and other people in Congress describe is this self-perpetuating cycle We kick the can down the road and we just keep kicking. And that's exactly what we see happening right now.
Martin, what do you make of Brad Chambers and his campaign rollout here in recent days? He's certainly bringing some big names in Republican politics into his campaign already.
Right. I mean, to me, it looks sort of like the establishment has a candidate now, right? You've had Holcomb's former campaign manager, you have the former executive director or the head of the Indiana Republican Party.
State chair. Yeah.
And so the people and Pence World is behind here as well. And so the question for me is that a lane that is already occupied, or is there enough sort of multiple candidates in sort of a far right lane that someone like Chambers could get through? And that'll be interesting to see. Normally people sort of tack to the right in a primary, and Chambers, at least from sort of first glance, looks like he's very much sort of in that sort of country club, old style Republican candidate.
His first ad didn't really delve into a lot of those red meat or culture war issues that a lot of candidates have been talking about. Mike, you predicted here on this program several weeks ago that former GOP Chair Kyle Hupfer would be on the Chambers campaign. Indeed, now he is. Do you think it's likely now that Chambers will get Governor Holcomb's endorsement as well?
Oh, I think it's likely, which is sad for Lieutenant Governor Crouch, who's been a loyal #2 to the governor for a long time. Tough choice for him. But, you know, when it comes to Chambers, you talk about country club Republicans. The last time we had a country club Republican really win was, or come close to winning, I should say, he lost, was Nelson Rockefeller. He was the ultimate country club Republican. Does Chambers want to take that route in a conservative Republican Party? I would doubt it.
Meantime, Robin, we mentioned those polling numbers earlier from Jennifer McCormick's campaign. It's still early, but what do those numbers tell you about her chances in this race?
First off, she's outstanding position right now. Two big issues. Laura and I experienced it a little bit earlier today. You know, we saw kids getting off school buses. There are 1.1 million kids in school in Indiana. I think education is going to be a big issue. And what you're seeing in the national political race with Nikki Haley surging is because of her position on choice. I think that's going to be an issue. Both those issues benefit Jennifer McCormick.
How big an issue will abortion be here in Indiana in 2024?
I think it'll still be a big issue, especially for Democrats and those who disagree with the policy. Now that it's gone through the state Supreme Court, I imagine that's going to really drive out a lot of voters. And it's not just for voters. Candidates can make a claim to this and really state where they stand and what they'd want to see differently if elected to office. I think it will really matter in 2024.
Okay, that poll certainly also took a closer look at the issue of abortion, the impact it may have. Coming up, we're hearing how the new abortion law in our state will impact how doctors are trained on abortion care and its ability on our impact to recruit doctors to our state. That's coming up next.